give everybody a couple more minutes to come in.
We have about 35 people who signed up as of now.
Yeah, I know a couple emailed me to say they weren't going to be able to make it anymore, but I suspect we'll get at least in the 20s.
Well, maybe they're having problem logging in because they said they'd send us a link and they didn't, but we went through the temple website.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry that you didn't receive it. I wonder if I know that we sent it out, so I wonder if it maybe ended up in your spam or trash. Is that possible?
No, because I check my spam regularly.
Okay. Sorry about that then.
You can also just get it from the weekly email that we get. I just clicked right in from there. Thanks, Bria. Oh no.
And you can also, if you want to find any of the Zoom links on the website under the banner called What's Happening, if you scroll down, it shows you all the available Zoom links.
Yeah, that's what I did. I went to the website and that's how I found it, right?
Something you can.
Oh, Bria, we're recording this, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, why don't I go ahead and get started, and then people will dribble in during my introduction, which really isn't that important. So I want to welcome everyone. My name's Debbie Makamal. I'm one of the, along with Cantor Spall, one of the leaders of our Chevra Kadisha, which is a burial society that Congregation Beth Am started about 1.5 years ago. A burial society, it performs typically 3 functions for a Jewish community. We help to perform what's called tahara, which is the purification of the deceased body. We also perform shmirah, which is the guarding of the body between death and burial. And during COVID, we've been doing that in a virtual format through Zoom links. And the third function of a Chevra Kadisha is to support mourners. And we've been trying to do that along with other communities within Congregation Beth Am during COVID in lots of different kinds of ways. I know that a number of our Chevra Kadisha members are here today, and that we also have members of Gesharim, which is co-sponsoring today's event. And then we have a lot of just interested congregants. So we're happy, joyful to have all of you here. Want to just tell you what we're going to do today, and then I'm going to hand it over to Cantor Spall to set an intention for us. We're going to hear today from both Sam Salkin and Cara Walden, who come from us from Sinai Memorial Chapel, our beloved and holy partners in the work that we do. And then Rachael Shea is going to lead us in and take us through some breakout sessions to kind of process some of the information that we're gathering around advanced planning. And then we'll probably have time at the end to come back together. So that's what we plan to do for the next 1.5 hours. We're really, really excited to have you all here. And I want to introduce Cantor Spall, who's really been the spiritual leader for our Chevra Kadisha in getting us going. So thank you, Cantor Spall.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, not just for introducing me so nicely, but also for making this happen for our Beth Am community. So what I thought I would do, I wanted to, first of all, I want to say hello and welcome everybody and say how wonderful it is to see so many faces here today. I wanted to share with you a bit about my own personal history around Jewish customs and death and mourning, and sort of how I came about forming a Chevra Kadisha at a congregation when I just started out as a cantor in Austin, Texas, and a little bit about about our practices, just to inform some of you. So those of you who are serve on our Chevra Kadisha, some of this will sound repetitive, but I don't know. I like to talk about it, so hopefully you'll get that. And then I'm going to introduce Sam Salkin, who's going to also give us some textual teachings. And anyway, so right. So let's see, from a very young age, I should say, I've been really, I've felt a certain special pride for our traditions around death and mourning. I come from a very, I would say, traditional Jewish family, in that, like, we really loved tradition. Not so much, like, we weren't that strict or anything, but my family loved Jewish tradition. And so some of the first funerals I attended were of my great aunts and uncles when I was living in New York, my own grandparents. And I just saw the beauty of our tradition. And I was able to see, like, how just how the whole community held up the mourners. They took such beautiful care of the dead themselves. I was able to see that, I was able to just see all these traditions and how thoughtful and filled with loving kindness that Judaism takes something that is that when you have a death in your family or a loved one dies, you feel it's natural to feel so untethered, right? You feel like, I always describe it as, from my own time in mourning, as you feel like a feather on the wind. And our tradition comes in at the most important time and grounds us and holds us and supports you through that. And taking so much care, it's almost, just love, these mitzvot around death and burial are known as mitzvot that are a chesed shel emet, like a true loving kindness. And it's true, and you feel that in all each of the customs that we hold are filled with meaning and love. So I noticed that even as a young person, from attending family funerals, I liked especially that it seems that our tradition didn't sort of try and airbrush the experience for us, right? Like, it's like we call it a cemetery. This is a casket. We don't dress up the person. Our tradition is to have the dead wear shrouds, and so most of us, I'm sure, have been to a funeral. We take part in the burial of our loved ones. We take part in this mitzvah by actually putting earth, hearing the sound, and we shovel earth into the casket. We are taking part in burying, which is such a visceral and shocking and in some ways really it's a difficult custom, right? I'm sure those of us who have done it, I think it's everyone here, it's difficult, and yet it's part of this beautiful tradition. It's almost like, I imagine that this is like the crown jewel. This is the our traditions are so beautiful. And I wanted, so we have that. So we have this this beautiful inheritance, right? And all right, so there's another part of it that, like I say, that our tradition has what to do. So when you're having that feeling of like, oh my God, everybody has that feeling of being untethered, that there's something, we are there, our tradition is there to take care of it. So even if some of these traditions are ones that you decide, hey, that might not really be for me, or I'd rather have this or that, that's all totally fine. But just to know that you're going to be taken care of, your loved ones are going to be taken care of. And it's going to be done in a way that is filled with love and care. So That's the first thing. So I was just out of cantorial school, and I started my first position in Austin, Texas. It is the capital of Texas, but and it has a beautiful Jewish community, but it is also Texas. It's not New York or San Francisco or LA. They didn't have a Jewish funeral home. But the non-Jewish funeral homes who took care of our funerals, they were very happy and helpful with, excuse me one sec. Come, you could go outside. You could go out. Yes, you can. Go ahead. Okay. Sorry about my puppy. So they were very accommodating to us. They would get us whatever we needed. But so we decided as a community that it was time for that we wanted to be able to take part in these traditions, the traditions specifically that Debbie mentioned earlier, that of tahara, which is purification, a washing and dressing and preparing the body for burial, and also shmira, which is the guarding of the body, and that in normal times that would mean going to the funeral home and sitting in a few hour-long shifts. You might be there for a couple hours at a time, or overnight, even for maybe 3 or 4 hours. And so the funeral homes were very helpful. They allowed us to come in and do these rituals. And so we started we started thinking about what it would mean for a Reformed congregation in the middle of Texas to start a burial society. And it was an incredible experience for me, and it was for the people who participated. And I'm sure the people who are a part of our Chevra now are having similar feelings, even though we have yet to really, really get into it because COVID has sort of come in between us. But so people came, and I still believe that this was something that brought our community in Texas, that synagogue, really, it brought people in. It was something that, well, for me and for the people who participated, it was really the most holy work that we had done before. So we developed, we used traditional texts, and we learned how. We had workshops, and we learned how to go in. Which we did also later, just a year and a half ago, with our Beth Am community, and we learned how to wash the body and get it dressed for burial, and we took part in this. And people came, and they felt like it was really a wonderful thing to do, to be able to do this for people. It was a very old community of about I think it's now probably over 120 years old, that synagogue. And so people really wanted to come in the middle of the night to sit. Felt like finally they were able to pay this special kindness. So anyway, so fast forward a bunch of years, and I was here, and my dear friend Debbie Muckamal and I were talking. I'm sure I was reminiscing about how wonderful this experience was for me, and she said, hey, we should do this at Beth Am, and so we did. And so now we're kind of a year and a half into this adventure, or this process, and I think it's very exciting to see how this is happening. So that's kind of in a nutshell how we got started. And so to tell you a little bit more about Chevra Kadisha and what these traditions are, and how you might decide to take part in them for yourself or for your loved ones, I'm excited to introduce Sam Salkin. So we brought in like the expert of all experts. So it's a real privilege that you're here, and I'm happy to introduce Sam, who is currently serving as the executive director of Sinai Memorial Chapel, Chevra Kadisha. So a little bit about Sinai, which you might hear again. It was founded in 1901, so it's over 100 years old. And Sinai Memorial Chapel is the only Jewish funeral home in Northern California, so it serves the entire region. And its goal is to provide end-of-life services for the entire Jewish community, regardless of a family's financial means or their religious affiliation. So that in itself is a huge thing, to know that we have this gem of an organization that is here to help anybody, all Jewish people, Jewishly affiliated or adjacent in the area. So Sam is an experienced business and nonprofit leader in other, before previously in his pre-Sinai Memorial life. He served as CEO of the Jewish Community Federation of San Francisco, the Peninsula, Marin, and Sonoma counties. He was also, I read, he is the CEO of Pete's Coffee and Tea, which is exciting, and other well-known firms. Sam comes to us from Greenville, Pennsylvania, and he lived, he grew up there and was bar mitzvahed there, and his family is from there for many, many generations. And he graduated from Cornell University. He's also married to Alexandra B. Derby Salkin. And in general, Sam, we are so happy that you are here with us this afternoon to share with us your teaching. Thank you.
Kenterspal, thank you. And my thanks and appreciation to everyone in the Beth Am community that made today possible. I know it took a lot more people than it would usually take because of the pandemic and Zoom, and great appreciation. I'm here today with two of my colleagues, David Habib, who was our managing funeral director for the Peninsula and South Bay, and Cara Walden, who is our advanced planning subject matter expert and specialist. I thought I would do three things with us today at the beginning, and then there'll be time for the breakouts that Debbie described, and there will also be time, I hope, for question and answers. And in terms of Q&A, let me also say that since we do have a prescribed amount of time, if anything comes up either in the moment and your question can't be answered, or the conversation today sparks a question and it doesn't come up until some later time, just know that between David Habib, Cara, and myself, we're here to answer your questions at any time that they arise. So don't treat this as a one-time opportunity and say, oh, I wish I had. If you wish you had, you can. I thought I'd talk about three things today. I thought I would talk about teach a little Torah. I'd just elaborate a little more on who Sinai Memorial Chapel is. And then finally, I thought I would talk about why plan. And these things are all kind of interrelated. So first of all, on the one hand, we have a lot of tradition, and on the other hand, we have very little halacha. We have very little Jewish law around death and burial and mourning and bereavement, but we also have a tremendous amount of tradition. And just like everything Jewish, not all the tradition is consonant. Our brothers and sisters who came here from the former Soviet Union as emigres have different practices than those who came from the Middle East and Mizrahi society, and those who came from as immigrants from shtetls in Eastern Europe at the beginning and middle of the 19th century and 20th century. So there is no uniform one Jewish way, and that's, I think, an important place to begin. But our tradition has 3 points in the Torah that I think that are worth always remembering. The first is in the beginning of Genesis 23, where Sarah, our matriarch, dies. And the burial of Sarah is the first account of death and burial in the Torah. And the second relates to the burial of Abraham himself, followed by the death of Jacob, and then followed by the death of Joseph. I want to touch on each of them a tiny bit. When Sarah died, she and Abraham were not together. It's not quite clear why they were not in the same place, and they had done no planning. And Abraham had an idea of what he wanted to happen, but he hadn't done anything to get what was in his head in motion. He wanted to secure a plot, a place for burial, not just for her, but for his family, for his mishpacha, but he wanted to own it. And because there was a history that said you're going to inhabit this land and it's going to be your land, but there was no ownership of the land. And so if you go to Genesis 23, as a reminder, you will see this complex negotiation of, well, the people who had the cave at Machpelah that he wanted were willing to give it to him, but he didn't want it to be a gift because he wanted to have some claim to ownership. And so the entire process that led up to the cave being available for Sarah's final resting place took a tremendous amount of energy away from mourning the loss of Sarah by her son Isaac. And this happens all the time in the 21st century in our community. People say, you know, I have this idea of what I want to do, but is that really what I want to do? Well, maybe I want to be buried at Alta Mesa. Maybe I want to be buried at the temple's plot in Colma. Maybe I don't want to be buried. Maybe I want this. Maybe I want that. Oh, this is what I want, but this is not what my partner's spouse wants. It takes a tremendous amount of energy when that's not the energy you really want to be expending when someone's taken their last breath. You really want to be focused on your emotions, the emotions of those who surround the person who has passed away. And all of a sudden you're thinking to myself, oh, he said he wanted to be buried with a flag because military service was important to him. And now I've just learned that I have to have his military discharge papers. So let's go back to Abraham and Sarah, and let's say the first burial took us away emotionally from the experience and got us involved in practical matters like real estate. The second burial that we come across, or the second planning lesson we come across, is Jacob. Now, Jacob had gone down to Mitzrayim because of the famine to be with his sons and to be reunited with his son Joseph. And he said he knew what he wanted. He knew that he wanted to be taken back and gathered unto his family. He knew he wanted to be taken from Mitzrayim to the land of Israel. So he had a plan of what he wanted, but he hadn't quite figured out how to get it done. And as a parenthesis, I will add, while our modern Jewish tradition, or more contemporary Jewish tradition, I should say, says Jews don't embalm, Jacob was embalmed, and his embalmed remains were ultimately taken back to the cave at Machpelah, where his father and his grandfather and his grandmother were buried. Finally, then we come to Joseph. And Joseph, fascinating story in Genesis, where Joseph says he does not want to be buried in Egypt, even though he was the major domo there. He wants to be buried in the land that he hasn't been in for hardly any of his life, when his brothers sold him into slavery. And he is carried through the desert for 40 years from the time the Hebrews leave the land of Egypt until they arrive in the promised land, where he then is interred and he's gathered unto his forebears. So these are the three early lessons about death and preparation and intentionality. And so I think that the thing we want to take away from this is that to the extent that we can be intentional in our lives about what we want next, and it doesn't mean that what we decide today is necessarily what we're going to want 10 years from now, but we can always change our minds. But given the current circumstances of what we know about ourselves and our kids and et cetera, planning is good, because at the end, what's most important is people have the space to deal with their emotions rather than dealing with logistics. So then the second thing I want to just talk about briefly is Sinai Memorial Chapel, Chevra Kadisha, and Cantor Spall gave a very nice introduction. A couple of things that I just want to underline. There is no other Jewish institution in North American life like Sinai. It is not very unique. It is unique. It serves the entire spectrum of the community. Very few places can say that. And it's not for profit. And most funeral homes in the Jewish community and otherwise are for profit. So, and we're the only Jewish funeral home between Los Angeles and Seattle. So while we primarily serve the Bay Area, we secondarily serve a very huge area. The things that are important for you to know is that we do it your way. While we are incorporated as a religious and charitable institution, the genius of Sinai is that your clergy at Beth Am, from our perspective, are the Mara Da'atris. They're the judges, they're the deciders, and we do it their way. So if Rabbi Morrison or the other clergy or Cantor Spall are officiating, and they tell, well, first of all, they don't, over time, they don't tell us because we know. We do a funeral the Beth Am way. Now you might say, well, I'd like something a little more traditional. And we say, well, we'll negotiate that with the clergy and it'll probably happen. Or I'd like something a little less traditional. Well, depends how less traditional, but we know how virtually every clergy, there are 300 rabbis in the Northern California Board of Rabbis, we know how each of them, what their preferences are and what their predilections are. So also in terms of advanced planning, we can help with that. And then the final piece of it is we have, from a Tachlis perspective, we have a very simple economic model. Because we're a nonprofit, we charge a markup to everyone. That's a small markup above our cost. And that markup above our cost creates a surplus. And that surplus allows us to take care of the poor. And it also allows us to take care of anyone who's lost an infant or a child or has had a perinatal loss. And we take care of those at no charge, irrespective of the family's means, because it's our notion that that family's loss represents our community's loss of potential. So it's an institution that's here to serve. And because we're a nonprofit, we start much earlier in our relationship with people and we end much later. We start because we do a session like this today with you, and we'll do one-on-one sessions with any of you who want to begin the advanced planning process, and we do that all at no charge. So we start earlier and we end later. We have 3 mourner care counselors on our team, and we provide bereavement counseling and grief support at no charge to the community. And even after that, and who knows when that can be, because for some people it's immediate, and for other people, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then all of a sudden they think they need this. But we also help people plan on veilings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I should also say, and then I'll move on from Sinai on to a little more on why plan. I should also say that often the phone rings, and when I say often, it's probably almost once a day, and someone says, I'm about to lose someone, or I've just lost someone, and I don't know what to do. And our response is, almost consistently, we're sorry for your loss. We do know what to do. We're here for you because we know what to do. And when I say we know what to do, I think it's fair to say that there's nothing we haven't seen or done. So for instance, this last week, we sent someone who wanted to be buried in Argentina. Very complex during COVID time, but we got it taken care of. We bury people in Israel on a regular basis. David Habib is our subject matter expert in that regard. People often want to be buried with their family members in cities where they came from, whether it's New Orleans or New York or Cleveland. And we do this as a matter of course. And similarly, someone can can pass away while on vacation or while traveling or while working out of town. And whether that passing occurs in Australia or in Mexico or New Zealand or on Mount Kilimanjaro, we know what to do. So our challenge is to help you know what you'd like to do, so we can give you the peace of mind that your final wishes are written down. They're going to be honored. You can pay for them in advance if you wish, but it's not at all a requirement. And our goal is to help you plan. For some of you, that's a conversation that will take a fixed amount of time on a particular day. And for others, it's going to be a process. You're going to want to start writing some things down, and you don't know whether you want to plan your funeral first or buy cemetery property first, et cetera, et cetera. It's all okay. We're here to meet you where you are and to help you move forward in making plans for your end of life so that you have greater peace of mind as you move closer to that time. So I think I'll stop there and move to the next section of our program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam. Cara, I think you were gonna take over from Sam.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much, Sam. So as Sam mentioned, I am the advanced planning funeral counselor at Sinai Memorial Chapel. So I am just going to talk a little bit about what I do and what I would do with you if you call Sinai and you want to go through this process with me. So on a day-to-day basis, I am working with families and individuals who are looking to do their advanced plans. So essentially plan their funerals in advance and even pay for their funerals in advance. And so there's 3 steps that we can do together to make sure that you are fully taken care of. And at the time of need, essentially all your family will have to do, your next of kin will have to do, is call Sinai, and Sinai will be able to move forward seamlessly. So the first step that happens when someone passes away is that a death certificate is issued. And so on that death certificate, there's a lot of personal information that gets asked of someone. So it's anything from, your name and where you were born to what are your parents' names and what is your mother's maiden name and things like that. And so I will work with families and I'll get all of that information in advance. And so then at the time, we don't have to go back and forth with your next of kin to get all of those pieces of information. And so, for example, for me, I don't even know my grandmother's maiden name, actually. And so as I started learning about this, I had to call my mom and be like, what is Grandma Arlene's maiden name? And just knowing that I didn't even have all that information really speaks to how much easier it will be on me now that I'm pre-planning for them. So that's the first step. The second step is to go over the actual services that Sinai offers and what you would want. So, do you, where are you going to be buried? This is when we would talk about caskets. This is when we would talk about, do you need a family car? Is your family going to drive themselves? All the things that you'll see in Sinai services on our website that has a price associated to it. And so after I have that conversation with you, I'm able to generate a quote that gives you the estimate of what those services would cost today. And so, as Sam mentioned, there's markup costs. Our prices change every year. And so I'm able to provide that estimate for you today. And if you choose to prepay, it locks in the price so that it no longer changes year over year. It also means that you have the peace of mind that everything is taken care of and that there's no financial burden left on next of kin. So those are the full process. I would say that whole session takes about 45 minutes. Whether you're an individual or a couple, we can do that whole thing pretty seamlessly and it's not too long. That's really the whole process. And I would say that people come in either really knowing what they want or not knowing at all. And we walk you through step by step, and I can, share so a lot of the things I hear are, am I asking all the questions I need to ask? What else do I need to be asking? And I will make suggestions around, these are questions that I hear on a day-to-day basis, or, really you have everything taken care of. And so that's what we would do together. can reach out if you want to do this process. If you want to, have a greater conversation with me, I can leave my contact information. I'm seeing the chat is disabled, so I'm not sure if anyone's able to enable it for me, and I can just put my email address in the chat. But other than that, you can also just call Sinai and ask for Cara Walden.
Cara, can I ask a clarifying question? We've talked a little bit about some of the rituals that a Chevra Kadisha would provide to our members or our members' loved ones. Would advanced planning include being able to denote what of those traditions one would want to partake in?
Yeah, so I would ask, are you wanting a Tahara and Tahrim? Do you want a Shomer? Tahara and Tahrim are included in our services, so there's no added cost. I would be told that, I'm a member of this congregation, and then we know that congregation has its own Chevra Kadisha, and so at the time of need, we know to contact you and coordinate. There is an additional cost to Shomer because we have to have someone stay in the facility overnight. But you can have someone come during the day in our facility and sit as Shomer during the day. So those are the kinds of questions that I would ask to, again, generate an accurate estimate for what that cost would be.
One of the things that I would add to what Cara said is that Sinai also owns and manages a number of cemeteries. But I like to say that we are cemetery agnostic. Because we're a nonprofit, we want you to be buried where you want to be buried, and we bury Jews wherever they want to be buried. So that your congregation has a section in a cemetery that's not ours, and as far as we're concerned, that's absolutely fine. We want you to be where you want to be, whether it's with community, whether it's family, whether it's a place that you lived previously. So and for some people, the planning process that begins with where they think they want to be buried, and for some other people, it ends with where they think they want to be buried, because they may know what they want, but they may not know where they want their final resting place to be. So there's no exact place to begin, and there's no exact place to end. But Cara's got the spectrum of what all the questions are.
Debbie, are you able to? I'm not sure who the host is. Are you able to enable the chat so I can just put my email?
Yeah, I think Bria's trying to work on that, and if not, we will.
If anyone knows how to do it, I don't see. I'm looking on my other computer.
That's okay. We'll work on that, and we can also send out to people your email address after the call. Yeah. Rachel, did you want to move right now into breakouts? Did you want to leave it open for questions and answers to Sam and Cara now?
Actually, I want to invite Sam and possibly Cara to also remind us about some of the less traditional services that you provide, especially thinking that I'm aware that no problem about having cremation if that's what someone wants. So if you can just delineate some of that very briefly for us right now, and then I will go to the next part.
So let's start with that. The standard answer is Jews don't cremate, but there are two cemeteries in Colma, one owned by Congregation Emmanuel and the other owned by Congregation Shereth Israel, both Reform congregations that were founded in 1849 at the beginning of the gold rush. And those communities have cremated since the day they were founded. So and there's a long tradition of cremation in Reform Judaism. There's a long tradition of not cremating in Orthodox Judaism, and as usual, conservative Judaism's kind of in the middle. We facilitate cremation, and we do so without judgment. What I would say often happens, though, and this is actually very important, Rachel, is that someone will call and say, I'd like to make arrangements. My mother's just passed away. I think mother wanted to be cremated. Jews don't cremate, do we? I'm just sort of giving you the Reader's Digest version. And the question that we ask is, what kind of a Jewish funeral would you like? because there is a popular notion that cremation is a substitute for a funeral, as opposed to cremation being a substitute for burial. And when we ask that question, it's often sets people a little kilter. Well, you mean I could have a Jewish funeral and I could choose cremation? And the answer is absolutely. And in fact, as it relates to the Chevra Kadisha at Beth Am, one could have preparation by the congregation's Chevra Kadisha. You could have a traditional Jewish funeral. And the only difference, if you will, that there would be is that instead of the hearse leaving the funeral, whether it was at the congregation or at Sinai or somewhere else, leaving the funeral home and going to the cemetery for burial, they'll go to the crematory for cremation. So about 20% of the people we serve choose cremation, which on a percentage basis relative to the population of this whole is tiny, because in the state of California, about 60% of the people choose to be cremated, but we facilitate cremation. We do not run or operate our own crematory, but we facilitate cremation. There are other things that come up too that people will say, well, you probably don't know how to do this, but. And the answer is, with all due respect, we probably have done this before, no but. So I know Bria once asked me about burial at sea. If someone wants to be buried at sea, we can arrange burial at sea. If someone wants ashes scattered, wants cremation and wants ashes scattered near the Farallon Islands, we can take care of that. We know how to do all of this. Let me underscore, though, that advanced planning makes all the difference in the world. So for instance, burial at sea, which doesn't happen very often, we have a subject matter expert on our team, Josh Alpert. He knows how to do this. But the nearest vessels that do burial at sea are either in Morro Bay or in Fort Bragg. So to the extent that we know somebody wants this, we can be geared up to do it. But there's probably nothing that anyone asks of us that we haven't seen before and haven't dealt with before. And there are some places where Jewish tradition does intersect this. So for instance, we, since 1901, have been very comfortable burying intermarried couples, have been very comfortable from both a religious and practical perspective dealing with LGBTQ individuals. There are often cemetery limitations. So there are certain cemeteries that have sections that do allow intermarried families where one spouse is explicitly not Jewish, as distinct from where they're agnostic. But again, we know what all the lay of the land is. So if you have questions about this as you're doing advanced planning, again, we can help you get what you want where you want it in almost all cases. Is that where you're going, Rachel?
Awesome. That is awesome. Wow. Really, I would have been a little bit afraid to just call you up and ask. I don't know why. Seems silly, really, but it would be hard for me. So I hope we can all spread the word that any of these questions can be asked.
Oh, and please, there is no such thing as an awkward or difficult question. We're here to help you get peace of mind, not to judge.
Great. This is great. So I think we'll advance to our part of the program where we specifically have planned a few minutes in a breakout room, probably looking at the numbers. Bria, probably looks like 5 people in the room. And let's just invite everybody, even the presenters, to join. I'm going to give you a little background about why we so want these breakout rooms so you'll understand what this is about. 10 years ago, in forming our project Gesharim, it means bridges in Hebrew. Now 10 years and counting. We've been going. Our major goal was to create a space, a safe space at Beth Am for open and comfortable conversations about dying, contrary to what we felt we perceived in American society as a whole, and honestly at Beth Am at the time. We've given usually about 3 programs a year. Some of them are very practical, like this one is pretty practical. Some of them have been purposely artistic in nature, film, music, and realizing that we encounter a way of experiencing the death of a loved one or contemplating our own death in a variety of ways, in music and art and literature and drama. And we wanted to share that with the congregation. And we've had sort of workshop-oriented programs. One of the things that we really want more of, and that we hope to do more of in the future, is simply have time for people to talk with each other and share their stories. Simple as that. There's just nothing like talking to someone and them telling you, yeah, you know, that was bad when Abraham and Sarah, I mean, it was pretty bad for me too, because my grandmother hadn't told our family what she wanted and we weren't ready. You can tell that story. You can tell the story of when it worked out well, that someone planned. You can muse with each other out loud if you like about what you're thinking you might want. And does anybody else feel the same way? So we're going to have about 10 minutes and we're going to go into about probably, I hope, maybe 5 people in a breakout room. Does that make sense, Bria? I hope so.
So you'll have about, we have 34 people on here now. So
let's do 7 breakout rooms.
Okay.
Okay. So just enjoy sharing your story.
Just before we start, if I may say a few things myself. My name is David Habib. And as Sam introduced me, I'm I'm the regional manager of Sinai Memorial Chapel in the South Bay and in the Peninsula. It was my pleasure and my honor to work together with the Beth Am Chevra Kadisha on getting up a Chevra Kadisha team. I think you guys have you have a very strong team, and soon enough we will go back and we will actually use the Chevra Kadisha to the full extent. Just one point, when we had our Redwood City office, which is now closed because of all this COVID situation, okay, the Shmirah that was done by Beth Am members was, there was no charge for it, of course. I mean, you guys, the team did it for a congregant, and of course Sinai would not charge. We will leave the office open for you guys, and you know, you guys would just, you know, it's going to be like a revolving door, that one person leave, the other comes in and do the Shmirah, and it worked beautifully, and it's very commendable on your part. So other than the fact that it was really an honor and beautiful to work with you guys and teaching what I knew how to teach, to see you do it was amazing as well. So so that's number one. Number two is the reason of pre-planning is now more important for me than everything, because about 5 months ago I was diagnosed with colon cancer myself, and you know, at the beginning is, wow, why me? How did it happen? I mean, I'm very young, you know, and maybe you don't see it, but I'm fairly young, you know, and you know why. So okay, it took me 2 days, 3 days to contemplate that, and then I said, it's not a problem. I'll take care of it. I'll pass it. We're in good hands, you know. But then, as treatment started, and it started to become quite hard, you know. I told myself that I owe it to my family, to my wife, and to my son, to my parents, to actually put everything in writing and get everything ready for them for whenever they need it. So this is what I did. I I urge all of you to do it. You know, you don't have to be sick. You can come talk to Cara. She's great. She's a fun person to talk with, and she will guide you step by step. And like that, it will be a peace of mind to your loved ones and to yourself as well. It will be just perfect. That's it. That's all I had to say. I'll join your groups.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. I couldn't have asked for anything more supportive of what Gesharim's goals are. That's what we want. We want people to be able to talk to each other and say, this happened to my friend. This happened to my mother. This is happening to me right now. This is how I feel. And is this as much as I feel like telling you right now? Some of the secrets I'm going to hang on to a little longer, maybe. We want to have that openness with each other, and we want to benefit from each other's support. Thank you, David, very much. That's the first time I've gotten to meet you, but now I understand why everyone holds you so dear.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please,
Ready
may
for
we-
breakout?
I think we're ready. Can everybody kind of let me know with a nod of the head if you know what we're going to be doing in the next few minutes, the next 10 minutes? Do you get it?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
I
I'm gonna
hope so.
do it.
All right.
And when we're done, we'll be able to come back and have Q&A from anyone who you wanted to ask questions of.
Okay, let's go.
Barb, are you there?
Great. Good to see everybody back in the main room. I think maybe some of the other groups are still coming back. I hope you had a chance to have some good, meaningful discussion with your breakout room partners. I know that probably we've put a lot of information out to you. There might have been questions that came up during your breakout sessions, and that we want to give people an opportunity, if they have technical questions that they want to ask of Cara, Sam, or David, to be able to elevate those. And if then there are spiritual questions that people want to ask of Cantor Spall, that we have the room for that now. We have about 20, 25 more minutes left.
Alan
So-
Warshaw's raising his hand. So Alan.
Great.
So I
Great.
just wanted to, I was answering a question that people might have had that we weren't really clear about, which was what exactly is Tahara? And what is that? Like, and that is a perfectly good question, because it's not something that typical Reform communities have been a part of, have done, but it's a beautiful process. I was saying of, so that our tradition believes that our physical body is really a holy vessel itself, that our physical body has been holding our soul and carrying us through life, and in itself it is a holy thing. And so we treat it with special dignity and care as we prepare it for burial. So the tradition is that first the body is gently washed with water. The hair is slightly combed. Some of the fingernails could be slightly cleaned and clipped, just like a little bit. There's no soap involved in this washing. And then after that, there's something called, and certain things are said. The group who perform this are the Chevra Kadisha themselves. And then after that, we take the body through its last mikvah, so to speak, where there's an immersion, but you can't, we don't immerse the body in a pool. Instead, we pour continuous streams of water over the body. And while we do, so that means you have 3 pitchers full of water, so that one of them is finished, the next one starts. And so you make sort of like you go down one side of the body and up the other, while saying, for a woman, we'd say Tehorahi, 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 which means she is pure, she is pure, she is pure. And that is that's the Tahara part. And then through saying certain verses from the Bible, we dress in the tachrichim that Cara mentioned, and those are the white shrouds. And then we help bring the mate or meta, the deceased. We lay them in the casket, putting we put some shards. There's different things that are put inside the casket, and then the lid is covered and a candle is lit, and it's put in this case, usually in refrigeration, but then so ready for the people who are coming for shmirah, which is just sitting sitting near in close proximity to the mate, to the casket, and usually reading Psalms or studying Torah during that time as a way of keeping the soul of your loved one company. We believe there's this beautiful tradition that our soul, as it leaves our body, where should it go? It should stay close, like it's hovering close by to its loved ones, so it's nearby, maybe disoriented, maybe like a newborn, we imagine, would feel disoriented coming to the world. So if the soul of is feeling disoriented, the shomer, the person watching, is there to keep it company and to bring comfort to the soul itself by reading and studying Psalms and texts. And that's what our community does. Okay, so there you go.
Okay, Alan, and then Rachael Shea.
Hi, I just wanted to call attention to what's on Beth Am's website under what we call the cycle of life, which includes this paper which I read a long time ago that Rabbi Block wrote, and also it has reference to resources that the Chevra Kadisha program, you guys have added that already, I guess, because it looks pretty current. But everybody at Beth Am should take advantage of that as a resource, as I guess education, et cetera, that people might not realize is on our website already.
Okay, Rachel?
Someone brought up being buried under a tree or ashes under a tree. And I guess that's in the eco burial category. So if Sam wants to maybe speak to that. What kinds of things are available in that regard?
Sam? Let's see, where's Sam?
There we go. Okay.
Here he is.
So first of all, there will be a magazine at the beauty salon or the barber shop that will always be talking about green burial because somebody was looking for an interesting assignment. This is not well-defined green burial. This is like natural foods. Mm-hmm. So it's as much in the eye of the beholder as there is a specific standard. But having said that, Jewish burial is historically very green. It's very green because a kosher casket, a Jewish casket, has no metal in it and no animal glue. So it easily decomposes dust to dust. In so-called green cemeteries, they may say that a concrete liner, which some cemeteries require or some counties as a matter of land use require, is not green, but it's sand and it's sand and it's cement. Then the other thing that comes up sometimes with green burial is that the matzeva, the headstone, because some people choose either polished stone or bronze, and in some greenish cemeteries they only use like rocks that have had a side sloughed off on them. The question about burial under a tree at a cemetery really depends on the cemetery's rules, regulations, and memorial specifications. A technical but important legal term, because every cemetery has its own rules, and some cemeteries permit you to plant trees at a gravesite, and other cemeteries do not. I believe, for instance, that the Beth Am section in Colma does not permit individuals to plant trees there. And I would say the majority of cemeteries do not, but some do. So this will be part of your due diligence if this is important to you in terms of selecting a cemetery.
Okay, Shelley and then Jane.
So we're talking today in the context of a congregation, but very aware of the fact that only a quarter or less of Jews in the Bay Area are members of congregations. So I'm interested in what happens for people who are Jewish, not members of congregations. They pick up the phone and call Sinai. How do you work with those folks and those families?
We actually deal with them not much differently than what we're talking about here at all. We visit with the family and we get a sense of what their Judaism is about for them. Because we deal with people from atheists to Chabadniks. We deal with we serve the Karaite community, and there are places in North America where Karaites would not be regarded as Jews. So we are all embracing, and so we meet people where they are. And someone may say, well, do I have to have a rabbi at my funeral? And the answer is no, you don't. You don't have to have an officiant, either by law or by Jewish tradition. Someone may say, Mother didn't belong to a congregation, but she would want an Orthodox funeral. Is that possible? And the answer is, of course it's possible. We can find an Orthodox rabbi that will be not only an Orthodox rabbi, but we're going to learn more about your family who will be a fit with your family so that you're having an experience that's comfortable for you while also honoring your mother's wishes. So I would say that, Shelley's percentages are about right. And we have a stable of rabbis who are available to serve people who have, for whatever reason, chosen not to be members of congregations.
Okay, Jane.
I went to a presentation at the Palo Alto Senior Center a little over a year ago by someone from a company who's they're buying forest lands and offering prepaid burial, like literally at the foot of a tree. Have you had experience working with outfits like that?
Yes, and I'll be candid and say I'm skeptical. And the fact of the matter is they can do for you what you've just described, Jane, but they are funded by hedge funds and venture capital. And it means that they're going to be sold someday for a potentially enormous profits. And the economics of this and the future of these institutions, I think, becomes very unclear. So I wouldn't say don't do it, but do it with your eyes wide open.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 10 more minutes if anyone has last questions. Diane.
Just regarding the tree, I want to tell you an experience we had. My husband and I were in Vienna with his aunt and uncle, and his uncle said, we want to go to my parents' grave site. And so we went to the cemetery, and we checked in the office, he had the number of the plot, and we walked and walked and walked and walked and walked and walked, and we couldn't find it. So my aunt, George's aunt, says, well, last time they had it in a big book. Now it's in a computer. Let's go look in the big book. We went back to the office. We looked in the big book, same number, walked and walked. It turned out that the grandparents were buried next to a tree. The roots had come up, it pushed up the stone and dumped it face down on top of the grave site, which is why we couldn't find the name. And then we had to pay to have somebody come and turn the stone over just so at least their name would be on the top. And because it was Shabbat, they couldn't do it for a few days, and then they had to come take a picture. So be careful when you get next to a tree.
Good counsel.
I think we're coming to Jane has a question, and then maybe I'm gonna close this out. Jane, please.
Cantor, I wanted to ask, when you were describing the Tahara ritual, how is the body's modesty maintained?
Well, for one thing, the makeup of the group is done with care as well. So we have, well, our Chevra has two teams, one male and one female. So females work on females and males on males, and that's also for people who identify as male or female. So and then so during the first preparation, the genitalia are covered, but during the washing they're uncovered. One of the, I would say that one of the, there are some customs of being on this Chevra Kadisha, and one of them is certainly, like, I know it goes without saying, I guess, but like, there's no joking. Like, we don't come into this room. In fact, there's very little talking at all that gets done. Most of, we will say a meditation before we begin outside of the room, where we, even before and at the end, we sort of ask forgiveness on behalf of the person, that if we used anything less than the utmost care in what we were doing, that we offer a confession of apology for that. So so those are some of the things. David, can you think of any other?
No, I think you, yes. So at the beginning, when we just clean the cover, the body, the genitals are covered. When the tahara happens, the purification, we want to purify all the body. So we take out the towel and the water goes over all the body. And then once that is done, okay, we cover again the genitalia until the body is fully closed. So almost at all time when needed, the body is, the modesty of the body is being kept, and no joking, no talking, not much talking. There is a leader that is called the Rosh of the Chevra Kadisha. When he is in the room, if there is any discussions of things needs to be that way or the other way, it's the Rosh, the head of the Chevra Kadisha, that will make the decision. And if he have a hard time making the decision, he will step out of the room, call the clergy, and they are like Sam said, they're the decision makers.
Thank you, David. Okay, last question, Judy Goldberg.
I was wondering, what happens if people have donated their bodies to science? Like on your driver's license, you have the place to check if you're in an accident. How does that work with funerals?
David, you want to jump in here?
Sure. I mean, we're treating each body in the most respectful way. So if somebody gave their I don't know, for example, an internal part to science, that will not stop the tahara. Tahara will take place, no issues, no problem. If somebody donated their skin for science, for example, it's a little bit more complex, but we're doing it to the best of our ability. We're getting as close as we can to do tahara with all the prayers and shrouding as much as we can. It's per case, but the people that work at Sinai, the Chevra Kadisha at Sinai, we're very dedicated, and we try to do everything that we can to get to perfection.
I would also add that this underscores the need for advanced planning, because if someone, for instance, wants to do something that maybe happens at Sinai once a year, they want to donate their brain to science. It's a limited amount of time period from the last breath to when that brain harvesting or organ harvesting can happen. It requires an outside service, not us, to do it. It requires a lot of coordination, et cetera, et cetera. We know how to do all of this, but time is of the essence. So again, if the person has identified the organ harvesting organization and has a file number, et cetera, we can move very rapidly and make sure that their wishes are met. But if someone says, well, I think mother wanted to give her brain to Harvard or UCSF, it's probably too late. It's probably too late. This requires advanced planning.
Thank you.
Great. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I want to specifically thank Rachael and Gesharim for co-sponsoring today's program with us. I want to thank Sam, David, and Cara from Sinai for participating today and sharing so much helpful information, but also being our holy partners in the work that we do. And I want to thank Bria and Liz from the Beth Am staff for their tireless organizational help to bring us to where we are today. And finally, I want to ask Cantor Spall to close us out with a song. We've talked about some heavy stuff today, and I would normally love for us to be in the room and give each other hugs, and we can do that through song perhaps instead.
And of course, we have to thank the fabulous Debbie Malcolm. Thank you so much for making this happen today, Debbie, and for really making this, the Chevra Kadisha, happen. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful gift. So, all right, everyone take a nice breath, sit up straight in your chair. We're gonna sing a little mantra-like thing. These words come from the 23rd Psalm, an appropriate Psalm since it's used so much at funerals, but it says that you have anointed my head with oil, kosi rivaya, my cup runneth over. These words are an expression of gratitude and really abundance, a feeling of abundance. So, so let's take some breaths and feel those as nourishing, cleansing breaths. Make sure that your microphone is muted so that you could sing out. This kind of lends itself to as much harmony as you're willing to try. So here we go. Just those two words, kosi rivaya. Kosi rivaya. Kosi rivaya. Kosi rivaya. One more breath. It is so wonderful to be with you today, everyone. Have a fantastic week. Everyone, feel good. See you soon. Thank you. Bye.
So Debbie, we good?
Yeah, that was great. Hi, Norma. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Sherry.
I was just trying to type to you. I have to go to a class that starts in 1 minute. So
Yes, I know.
Say goodbye. Bless all of you. I love you. Love you.
Love you too, Norma. I hope you're doing very well.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay, all good things.
Okay, so
Great.
it was recorded and I will send it to you, Debbie, and you can send it out.
Okay, thank you, Bria. That's so great. Rachel, I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was a nice mix of very concrete information and spiritual, uplifting. So thank you for organizing it the way you did.
I think the groups went okay. I think it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always helpful to have a little bit of time for people to be a little bit more intimate. And I was particularly glad that David could be there. David is our Chevra's link. And so for our Chevra, like it's just really important. And we've all been worried about him anyway. And so just seeing him was helpful.
Yeah.
On so many levels, right?
Yeah.
Really.
So, and hopefully people will contact Cara directly and that'll be good.
It was
I know-
nice that there were other people besides our group on the call.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel, were some of the people in Gesharim, like, I didn't recognize all the people, so maybe some of them are in Gesharim and then some of them are just members who care about the topic.
I think it's more like people caring about the topic, but some of them would have been definitely from Gesharim.
Mhm.
I couldn't see everybody, so I
Great.
can't honestly say. But like I told you on the email, this is a good number. And
I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to copy the participants list and I couldn't. But I guess when we watch the recording, we can see.
well, if somebody wants that, I mean, I imagine Rachel Tash is the one to ask, and they would know, or Liz Weisbond, they would probably know how to do that, but I'm okay with it being whoever it was.
Yeah, it's fine. And we've already made clear to Cara that we can't share the information with them, that if she wanted to, we would send something out on her behalf. So
And you
But my
got her,
feeling about something like this is I bet everybody heard at least one thing that they hadn't quite realized,
Mhm.
and they're going to tell someone, and they're going to tell them where they heard it. So that will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Debbie,
so
you
that's
got
great.
that information from Cara, the form, because I copied it too. She said you
Oh,
can
I-
submit a form. I have it. I'll email it to you.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see it here. I can
Okay.
click on it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Great.
bye.
All right. See you both. Thanks so much, Bria, for all your help always.
My pleasure.
Thank
All right.
you,
Take
Bria.
good care,
Bye.
both of you. Love you. Bye.
Bye.